Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Miriam, and today I'm sharing with you all my May TBR. It's almost May. Oh my gosh. It's January, and then it's May, and then before we know it, it's December, because time doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I don't do TBRs very often, and you guys have probably noticed that, but May is a special month because there are two readathons that I am absolutely dying to participate in. The first one being the historical fiction readathon, I think it's called, and that is by Katie from Books and Things. And then we have the first ever Christian fictionathon or fictionathon, and I saw the announcement for this at Paperbacks and Ponytails, and this is the lovely Katie who has decided to run this readathon, and I'm so excited to participate. I was actually thinking recently, like, it'd be so nice to have some sort of Christian fiction readathon, and then she literally posted the announcement the next day, so I was really excited to see that. So first I'm going to go over the books I'd like to read for the historical fiction readathon, and I'll also have the prompts listed below in case you would also like to participate. And I also will have all the announcement videos for the two readathons in the description box, and let's just get started. So the first prompt for the historical fiction readathon is to read a work of historical fiction set in the country that you are from. So I'm from Canada, so for this prompt, I will be reading Letters Across the Sea by Genevieve Graham. So from what I know, this book is about a girl named Molly, and she has been dreaming about becoming a journalist, but she really needs to focus on just finding whatever work she can during the Great Depression to, keep her family afloat. And one way that she kind of keeps her sanity during this really difficult time is by going to baseball games and watching baseball with one of her best friends. And she's kind of crushing on her best friend's older brother, Max. But something really sad starts to happen, and that is in Toronto, these clubs start forming that are swastika clubs and no Jews allowed clubs. And this is 100% true. This actually occurred during the 1930s here in Canada, and it's really, really sad. Toronto has been going through a lot as a city. There's a lot of unemployment, and Jewish communities are suffering. They're being targeted, and it's just an awful place to be living if you are a Jew during this time. The only other thing that I know about this book is that one day there is a riot in Toronto, and Molly and Max are both caught up in it, and there are consequences for their families, and that's all I know about this book. I have heard really, really good things about it. I've heard that it takes place partly in Toronto and partly in Hong Kong, and it also jumps from 1933 to 1939, which is the start of World War II. So I'm really, really excited to read this book, and I have read one Genevieve Graham book before. I don't quite remember what it was called, but I'll insert a picture here. And I did overall really enjoy that book, so I'm excited to continue trying some other Genevieve Graham books. The next prompt is to read a work of historical fiction set in a different country than where you're from. So I'm going to go with a book set in the UK, and that is Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield. And in this book, we have an inn that is along the River Thames, if I'm not mistaken, and one day this man walks in holding a dead girl in his arms, and then a little bit later she ends up coming to life, and the people who live along this river are like trying to figure out if this was something magical or if there's like a scientific explanation to what happened. And that's all I really want to know about this book. The other book I've read by Diane Setterfield was a huge hit for me. I really enjoyed it, so I'm really looking forward to reading this one. The next prompt is to read a book that is set in your favorite time period to read about. So for me, that would probably be the Regency era, although it is really difficult for me to choose a favorite, but I'm going with the Regency era for this one. So I'll be reading Powder and Patch by Georgette Hare, and as usual, I don't know what this is about, so I'm gonna read the back. So it says, for her, he would do anything. Plain-spoken country gentleman Philip Jetton won't bother with a powdered wig, high heels, and fashionable lace cuffs until he discovers that his lovely neighbor is enamored with a sophisticated man about town. But what is it that she really wants? Cleone Charteris sends her suitor Philip away to get some town polish, and he comes back with powder, patches, and all the manners of a seasoned rake. Does Cleone now have exactly the kind of man she's always wanted, or was her insistence on Philip's remarkable transformation a terrible mistake? I'm just expecting humor and wit and all around a good time from this book, but that is Powder and Patch. The next prompt is to read a work of historical fiction set in a time period you are less familiar with. So for this one, I'm going to read a book that is set in the 12th century, and that is The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. And I want to go into this book as blind as I possibly can, just because I want my reaction to it and my feelings towards it to be completely raw, and you know, I don't want to have certain expectations just because so many people have very strong opinions on this book. And so what I do know though is that it is basically about the building of a massive cathedral, and people whose reviews I really trust have said that the character work in this book is phenomenal and that it's so much more than just a story about building a cathedral. But it's massive. It's like 900 and something pages. But the audiobook for it is coming in soon for me, so I'm really excited to get to it and see what I think. There is a bonus prompt that is read a work of historical fiction over 500 pages, so this one's perfect for that prompt as well. So the next prompt is to read a work of historical fiction with a speculative element. And so I think this book does have a speculative element. I think it has time travel, but if I'm wrong, please correct me. But for this prompt, I hope to read The Shadowy Horses by Susanna Kearsley. And what I know about this book is that it is about an archaeologist, and she works with this other male archaeologist, and I'm pretty sure they're meant to be like love interests in this book. And as they're working on this excavation, they discover something that indicates the final like resting place for this Roman legion from, like, I'm guessing ancient Rome. It says nearly 2,000 years ago. And this Roman legion has apparently disappeared. So 2,000 years ago, they just were gone off the face of the planet. And there is a young boy who is saying that he saw the ghosts of these Roman soldiers. And I'm pretty sure Susanna Kearsley does write with speculative elements in her books. So I'm guessing that's what this is about. And I'm guessing that there will be some sort of ghostly aspect to this book, so I'm really looking forward to reading this as well. The next prompt is to read a work of historical fiction about a real historical figure or a specific historical event. So for that, I would like to read The Lady of the Rivers by Philippa Gregory, and this is the first book in the Cousins War series. I'm pretty sure, might be wrong about the series. I know there's like a few different series and then they were kind of like merged into one. So in this book, we have Jacquetta, the Duchess of Bedford, who she had a big role to play in the War of the Roses, which was a real event that occurred, and that's all I really know about this book. I know that King Henry VI is a part of this story, and I'm really looking forward to it. I've only heard good things about Philippa Gregory, so I think this is a good book to kind of get into this period in history that this book could have worked also for a time period that I'm less familiar with, but I want to read as many books as I can for this readathon, so I'm really looking forward to this one, and let me know if you guys have read it and what your thoughts were. And yeah, that is The Lady of the Rivers. And so for the last prompt, it says read a classic work of historical fiction. So for that, I'm going to be reading The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. It was written in the 19th century and it's set in the 17th century, and it's about musketeers. That's basically all I know. So we have D'Artagnan, a young nobleman who goes to Paris in the 17th century, and he would like to join the musketeers that guard Louis XIII. So he ends up fighting along three heroic comrades, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis. And yeah, that's all I know. I've heard great things about Alexandre Dumas' writing style. I have never read anything by him yet, so I'm really nervous to read this book, but I'm also really looking forward to it and seeing what all the hype is about when it comes to Alexandre Dumas, because I've only heard good things. So I'm really looking forward to this book. So that is it for the historical fiction readathon. And now I'm going to go over the books that are for the Christian fiction readathon. So the group read for this readathon is Under the Tulip Tree by Michelle Shockley. And this book also works for the first prompt, which is flowers on the cover. And so I'm going to be using this book for that just because it has the word tulip in it. And I know Katie was saying you could do that, so I'll be doing that for the first prompt as well. So the summary says, 16-year-old Lorena Leland's dreams of a rich and fulfilling life as a writer are dashed when the stock market crashes in 1929. 7 years into the Great Depression, Rena's banker father has retreated into the bottle. Her sister is married to a lazy charlatan and a gambler, and Rena is an unemployed newspaper reporter. Eager for any writing job, Rena accepts a position interviewing former slaves for the Federal Writers Project. There, she meets Frankie Washington, a 101-year-old woman whose honest yet tragic past captivates Rena. As Frankie recounts her life as a slave, Rena is horrified to learn of all the older woman has endured, especially because Rena's ancestors owned slaves. While Frankie's story challenges Rena's preconceptions about slavery, it also connects the two women, whose lives are otherwise separated by age, race, and circumstances. But will this bond of respect, admiration, and friendship be broken by a revelation that neither woman sees coming? That sounds really good. I'm really excited to get to that book. And then we have the next prompt. I did forget to mention that this readathon is basically a spring readathon, so the prompts are all revolved around spring, and I think that's really awesome. So the next prompt is, with new blooms come new authors. Read a book that is written by a new to you author. So for that, I'm going to be reading To Steal a Heart by Jen Turano. I have never read anything by this author, and this book is basically about a girl named Gabriella who left behind her old life as a street thief, but then someone that she knows is like framed for theft, and she has been asked to help, I guess, prove their innocence. Gabriella used to have a friend named Nicholas, and for some reason they have drifted apart, but they end up meeting again, and sparks fly and there's romance as usual. I have heard that Jen Turano is very funny in her books, so I do have higher expectations for this book just because you guys have heard my thoughts about Christian fiction before. I am quite picky. So yeah, I'm still looking forward to trying this out as I've never read anything by this author. And it's also the first book in the Bleecker Street Inquiry Agency. So I do like that there is like a mystery element to this, and again, higher expectations for this one, but that is To Steal a Heart. The next prompt is April showers bring May murders. So read a mystery or a thriller. So for this one, I will be reading The House on Foster Hill by Jamie Jo Wright. This will be my, I think, third Jamie Jo Wright book, and so far she is an auto-buy author for me. I really love her writing. I don't even need to tell you, I don't know what this book is about, so let's go to the back. It says, Kane Prescott is no stranger to death. When her husband died 2 years ago, her pleas for further investigation into his suspicious demise fell on deaf ears. In desperate need of a fresh start, Kane purchases an old house sight unseen in her grandfather's Wisconsin hometown. But one look at the eerie abandoned house immediately leaves her questioning her rash decision. And when the house's dark history comes back with a vengeance, Kane is forced to face the terrifying realization that she has nowhere to hide. A century earlier, the house on Foster Hill holds nothing but painful memories for Ivy Thorpe. When an unidentified woman is found dead on the property, Ivy is compelled to discover her identity. Ivy's search leads her into dangerous waters, resurrecting painful memories and forcing a reunion with the man who broke her heart. Can Ivy unravel the mystery and find a renewed hope before any other lives, including her own, are lost? So it seems like, as usual, it'll be a dual timeline story, and she does a really good job of dual timelines. She intertwines the two stories seamlessly, and there's always that feeling of how can this not be a ghost, but then there's always like this explanation at the end because she doesn't write paranormal stories. So I love this author, and I'm so excited for this book. I heard it's one of her really eerie ones, so I'm really looking forward to getting to this one. So the next prompt is spring cleaning. Read a book that's been on your TBR the longest. So this book I have owned for so long, and it is time. I need to read this book already. And that is With This Pledge by Tamara Alexander. Tamara Alexander, she's like a guilty pleasure author for me. Like when I read her books, although they deal with like slavery and really difficult topics, it's the romances that they just make me roll my eyes all the time. But again, it's guilty pleasure. I love it. So this book is about a girl named Lizzie who is a governess at this very big house called Carnton. And this, I believe, is during the Civil War. So she is in Tennessee, which was part of the South. And so Carnton becomes this convalescent hospital type home for Confederate soldiers. And I'm a little nervous to get into this just because of the themes. But yeah, I have had this book on my TBR for a really long time, and I don't know what I'm gonna think, but I do want to read it, and we'll see what I end up thinking about it. So the last prompt for this readathon is Spring Fever, read a romance book. And so for this prompt, I would like to read Bridge to Haven by Francine Rivers. And this has been a book that I've wanted to read for a while now, so now's the perfect time. And so this book is basically about a girl named Lena Scott, and this is the 1950s, it's Hollywood, she's a rising star, but she also has a lot of secrets, and she seems to be hiding her past. And then we have another character named Ezekiel, and Ezekiel basically found Lena as a newborn baby, and she had been abandoned, and so he helped raise her along with his son. And his son Joshua has been Lena's closest friend, and so Lena's grown up, and she ends up very much tempted, you know, by the glamour that Hollywood promises, and she has come into Hollywood. She's this rising star now, and she soon finds that this fame that she has comes at a huge price. And so it's her story of healing. From what I know, I heard it's a very emotional story, so I'm very much looking forward to reading this book as well. So those are the books for the Christian fiction readathon. I'm very much a mood reader, like huge mood reader. One day I could be planning to read this book and then the next day I have no desire to read it. So I'm really hoping that I can get to each book. And I also want to mention a book that I will be buddy reading with Katie from Paperbacks and Ponytails, and that is The Seven Dials Mystery by Agatha Christie. I've always wanted to do a buddy read with a friend, so I'm really glad that we're able to do this. And y'all should check out her channel. She is amazing. She's just so full of joy, and every time she talks about books, it just makes me smile. So check out her channel. And so yeah, we're going to be reading The Seven Dials Mystery, and I'm really looking forward to this one. So all these books, it's quite a long list of books, but if I do read all of them, I guess I'll just be mood reading for the rest of the month. So I have nothing else on my TBR to share. So that's a wrap for the books that I 100% really want to get to in May. And yeah, if you guys are participating in either of these readathons, let me know below and what you guys want to read. So that's it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in my next video. Bye.